We have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat. Period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Hello, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. I want to thank everybody for stopping by this evening. Always good to see you. Let's see. We got the whole crew. I saw Flaming Jackson. I saw Miss V. I saw Arizona Raven and Trish Killian. Let's see who else we've got. Stacy Michaels. Good to see you, Stacy. Let's see. Who am I forgetting? Miss Hermit Hill, Kentucky. Leisure Beast. All right. Seventh Son. And I am the Noise Opera. 40-foot Garbage Man, glad you're here. People, this is going to be a good one. I'm actually excited about this this live feed. And the reason is I think this is a subject that we've talked about, but probably never quite like we're going to do this evening. The one of the keys to being happy and to being happy without drugs being a part of your life is self-awareness. And we've talked about this a lot, right? We've talked about being self-aware. We've talked about being honest with yourself, all of these things that sort of come into play. And I think that there is a very serious misconception that a lot of humanity wrestles with, whether they realize it or not. Most of society, most of humanity wrestles with this as a concept. And what it really boils down to is there's a very large difference between pleasure and happiness. There really is. And the proof of that is that, drugs bring out and supply our body with pleasure consistently. It is the one thing that they do. Drugs will absolutely bring you pleasure. They will not bring you happiness. And if that were not the case, I assure you, we wouldn't all be gathered here this evening to talk. And unfortunately, a lot of people seem to have lost sight of this as a fact. And it creates an awful lot of problems. But thinking that drugs make you happy is like maxing out all of your credit cards, right? And considering yourself rich with the money that you just spent. I mean, yeah, that you're going to be able to go and purchase some things, but all you're really doing is building up a really ugly debt, something that you're going to have to pay later on down the road. It's exactly what happens with drugs. Yeah, you're going to get pleasure for the time that you're on it, but what you're doing is destroying your future, damaging the present, and all of the other things that go along with it. Obviously, finances become a very serious issue. All of the things that sort of pile up when you start swapping out happiness for pleasure. And this comes in so many different forms, people. I know we've said many, many times here on the lifeboat that it doesn't really matter what your addiction is, because the mechanism of addiction is the same, regardless of whether or not you're drinking or you're drugging or you're gambling, right? Or you're watching pornography or anything that you're doing to the point of compulsion. anything that you're doing to the point where you can no longer control the fact that you're doing it, the fact that it starts then controlling you. So it takes many different forms. And I think that as we start to explain this tonight, in maybe a slightly more scientific approach to explaining this, I think it's going to make a little bit more sense, and hopefully it's going to get you guys talking, because that's the goal of what we do here is to bring up subjects that get the crew discussing these things among themselves, because that's usually where the lion's share of the learning takes place. I would suggest, take it or leave it, but I would suggest that as we go through this and you start to look at the difference between dopamine and serotonin and what it does in the body, right? What it does to the mind. As we start to go through this, start thinking about the compulsions in your life. Start thinking about the things that you are no longer able to control, because this is going to start to make a lot more sense from an addiction standpoint when you start to understand it more. And at first, I want to talk about dopamine. The reason being that this is the chemical that is going to be supplying pleasure, right? Now, obviously, we get pleasure from drugs, cocaine, whatever it is you're putting into your body, you're going to get pleasure from the drug itself. But everybody gets that. Where we really start to run into trouble is on the addicted mind. You're going to start getting very large releases of dopamine that are supplementing the drugs itself. And this is where the pleasure center of the brain, the reward center of the brain, starts to jump the track. Now, when you start to look at dopamine, we're looking at something that is more of a short-term kind of a situation. It's like necking a piece of cake, right? Enjoying a piece of cake. You're going to get a visceral effect out of this. And by that, I mean, you're going to be feeling it throughout the entire body. And we've all been there, right? You eat something and you go, oh, wow. And it's just, you literally start to feel pleasure in every single part of your body. It just starts to feel wonderful. One of the problems with this is it inspires the body to take more, right? Once you start to do anything and the dopamine gets released, you're literally training yourself. The brain is telling you what you need to do is eat another piece of cake, right? That felt fantastic. I felt that down to the toes. So go and grab another piece of cake and let's do this again. This is the difference between the addicted brain and the non-addicted brain, is you start to get this feeling of, I need more, the constant, I need to feed this, so that you continue to get that dopamine release. Normally, it's experienced alone. This is not the kind of thing that you do with people. Think about eating, shopping, binging on anything, drinking, gambling, watching porn, any of these things where you're getting these huge releases of dopamine. These are not usually things that people do with others. These are things that people do by themselves. And this lends itself to that whole addictive behavior. It's one of the reasons why way back in the day, one of the first questions they asked anybody if they thought they had a drinking problem was what? Do you drink alone, right? Do you ever just go get a six pack, or you go get a fifth and just start pounding it with nobody there? Because obviously people, the difference is in air quotes, normal folks, alcohol becomes something that people use at celebrations. They use it at parties. They use it when they're watching a football game on the weekends with friends over. It's not something that, again, air quotes, normal people or non-addicted people don't go grab a fifth, sit down with a water glass and start drinking it alone. That behavior is driven by that dopamine, right? It inspires you to take it. You get the dopamine release as soon as you start to do it. That compulsive behavior gets you to drink more and to do it alone. And these are some of the dead giveaway signs. And again, this makes the brain continue to crave more and more and more. There's no way to ever satisfy that, longing for dopamine. And if you continue to do that, no matter what it is you're doing, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be working out, right? It could be doing anything. But if you continue to do things that are getting you a large release of dopamines, excess of that is going to lead to addiction, plain and simple. This is the center of the brain that creates addiction. This is the chemical that, released improperly, is what drives addiction in everybody. This is not unique. This is something that, that is the driving force behind addiction. This is what we're talking about when we talk about the malfunctioning reward center of the brain. Now, normal people, they get dopamine. The normal person eats a piece of cake, they get it. They do. What happens is they don't get it to the same level. And with most people, they're able to keep it in check. They get that feeling, and it's visceral, goes through the entire body. And then the brain kicks in and goes, boy, that was awesome. I would love to eat another piece of that, but I'm not going to, because I would rather not weigh an extra 60 pounds by the end of the month. I'm not going to go crush 12 Krispy Kremes, even though every time I eat one, I get that same beautiful feeling. The logic center of the brain takes over. In the addict, quite simply, that does not happen. We feel that release of dopamine and we go, oh yeah, I'm eating 12 of these. And you know what? I might go grab another dozen. That's the addictive mind. It's not that other people don't get the same, again, air quotes, normal. It's not that people who are not addicted don't go through the same process, but they're able to keep this in check, something that we are not. Also, in the addicted mind, when we know what we're doing is wrong, the dopamine release is the same. And then people who are not addicted, people who aren't suffering from the phenomenon of addiction, when they start doing things, they'll go, boy, you know what, that felt good, but that was wrong, man. That just, you know what I mean? What we just did was wrong. I am not doing that again, because the other half of their brain, the logic center, goes, you're really comfortable with this, right? We just stole to get this. You're happy? You're cool with stealing? The addicted brain turns off that entire section. The logic part gets switched off like a light switch. And then the next thing you know, you're just into that feeling and chasing that high, chasing that next dump of dopamine. Now, that right there, people, everything that we just talked about, that's pleasure, right? That is what happens with pleasure in the brain. Dopamine equals pleasure. Now, let's talk about happiness. In theory, everybody, I've never met someone that didn't say, boy, what I'd like is to not be happy, right? Everybody you meet, especially in sobriety, says, I kind of would just like to be able to be happy without the drugs in my life. Well, the chemicals in the brain that are going to supply happy, that's more your serotonin and less your dopamine, okay? And let's start off at the top. It is not addicting. This is not the same kind of behavior. Most people, almost every person, does not chase that serotonin the same way that they chase dopamine. And one of the reasons for this is it's not short-lived. The dopamine release, no matter how good it feels and how beautiful it is, it's on and off like that, right? This is one of the reasons that the crack epidemic of the 80s was so awful, right? The buzz of the crack was only about 10 or 15 minutes. So somebody would hit that crack pipe, get that initial rush, then the dopamine would kick in, but 25 minutes later, they would crash on both, right? You do crash when the dopamine leaves your body. It's one of the reasons that we continue to chase. That does not happen on the other end of this spectrum. When you start to deal with serotonin, it is a longer lasting effect. So when you get a serotonin release, you get that happiness thing, and it might last all day. You've heard Mark and I say this so many times, but we get a really good comment here. Someone that says, the crew of the lifeboat has changed my life. And, we've said, how many times have we said it? Sometimes, man, that'll last days. Literally, that will last days. It keeps us going. It keeps us just flying, because the longer lasting effect of serotonin and what it does in the brain to make you happy. Now, people, anyone who has ever gone and been put on an antidepressant, they're usually called SSRIs. You understand? This is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. You know what reuptake means, right? To take back in, right? So when you're taking an SSRI, they're ensuring that a decent amount of that serotonin, as opposed to just getting sucked up into the brain, gets to hang out around there and continue to do what it does to offset the feelings of depression. Literally happy pills, right? That's the concept behind it. And This can happen without that medication. This has been proven. This can happen without that medication. I promise you, people, the Lifeboat does it for myself and it does it for Mark. We talk when this show is over, every single night we talk about it. And when the show is over and it was a good one and the comment section's flying and we got new people and they're excited and they're happy, we get that dose of serotonin and it'll last, the next day when we get up, we're texting each other. That was a good one last night. Oh, that was a good one. When so-and-so said this, or, I really think that person's coming around. It's so much different than chasing that dopamine buzz, chasing that fleeting feeling of pleasure. So it's longer lasting and it's not addicting the same way that the dopamine is. And it's not visceral, but it's ethereal. It's going to be affecting your brain more than the entire body. It really is a brain buzz. You can get pleasure, obviously, in different parts of the body. Barring the absolute obvious people, right? Sex is something that obviously you feel throughout the entire body, right? And you get massive amounts of dopamine released when you have sex with someone. When you hear people talk about the difference between having sex and making love, they're talking about serotonin, right? You can go and have a relationship with someone that you've never met. I promise you there will be dopamine release, right? All of that is very normal. What you're not going to get is that loving, happy feeling that you get when you're with somebody that you deeply care about. It's the difference between something being good and something being amazing. But it's going to take place north of the chin, right? So this is all centered in the brain. It inspires giving, right? Serotonin is something that inspires people to actually do the right thing. Crazy as it sounds, but this is one of the chemicals in the brain that makes people want to volunteer, makes people want to go and work at a soup kitchen, or just hang out with other people who need help. You hear people all the time who come to the boat and say, you know what? I've been sober for 35 years, or I've been sober for 25 years. I'm not here for any other reason other than to give back. I want to be here to help. Well, I promise you, people, that's serotonin. By the way, Charlie Murphy, good to see you. That is one of those things that drives the Lifeboat. One of the things that brings people back night after night after night to watch my ugly mug is the comment section, right? It's the live chat. We talk about this all the time. It's not what we talk about here on the screen. It's the fact that we're able to talk for an hour. So it gives you people the opportunity to talk with one another about things going on in your lives and to help one another. And in the process of doing that, the serotonin gets released. And the more of that serotonin that gets released, another really cool thing about serotonin that is wildly different than dopamine is it causes a bonding effect. You understand? There is a bonding effect. So, when you say, well, you go and you meet people in a chat room kind of a situation, you're not really going to bond with those people. Well, traditionally, you probably won't. But if what you're doing in there is centered around love, centered around caring and things of that, that's the kind of thing that can build a relationship, even in one of those situations where you don't see people face to face. I believe I just saw my friend Bubba. Bubba, good to see you, bud. Close friend of mine from way back in the day, people. Bubba's a great guy. Really, really a good guy. It inspires giving and it inspires philanthropy, the desire to give back, the desire to help. Obviously, not something you're going to get from dopamine, but it is definitely something that you're going to get from serotonin, which is, again, why this lends itself to happiness as opposed to simply pleasure. This is also something that you're not going to be doing alone, right? We talked about dopamine. We talked about, guys watching porn or guys gambling online or people drinking alone, all of the different things that you do, binge eating, you go out and shop and blow tons of money. These are all activities that people tend to do away from everybody else. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is your brain is telling you, if you do this around people, they're going to tell you to stop, right? Truthfully, your brain is overriding everything logical. And people, this isn't a conscious thought. I don't want you out here right now going, I never think that. Of course you don't. But I promise you, your brain is doing it for you. Your brain is going, whatever you do, don't invite anybody with us, right? Because when they see you buy something for $1,000 on a credit card that they know you already have $16,000 debt on, they're going to call you an idiot. But it's fun. Let's go shopping. It's all designed to keep you feeding that dopamine. This is why people that you hear individuals say, I got clean and I made it for 60 days or whatever. I was really doing good. And then I started messing around with some online gambling, or I started to mess around with some porn. And people are usually blown away by this. You know what I mean? They go, I can't believe I fell right back into something. Of course you did. It's not people, the insidious part of drug addiction isn't the drug. You understand? The insidious part of drug addiction is your brain kicking that dopamine to you for doing the wrong thing. So once the brain realizes that, all right, you know what? He's done snorting coke. He's pretty serious about it. Let's turn him into a shopper, right? Let's get him over to the, to eBay and see if we can't get him to max out his credit cards, because that's going to release the same kind of a dopamine release as the drugs did. Or let's get him to watch internet porn for 6 hours a day, right? Any of these things. It's why you see people quit drinking and put on 80 pounds, because as opposed to getting that dopamine each time they crack the top of a beer or pour themselves a mixed drink or taste that on their lips, they'll just start going for the Krispy Kremes. They start binge eating. And it's not, you're not people talk about it, well, you're trading one addiction for another. You're just trading one activity for another, right? You're just because there are people who won't center in on one, but you'll see people who quit and they're shopping and gambling and anything they can do to keep the dopamine going. They become dopamine chasers. But once again, it's going to be one of those things that's almost always done alone. And with serotonin, you end up doing these things in groups. Why? Because the more people you're around and the more connection that you feel, the more serotonin gets released. This is why Mark and I beat this to death. What's the opposite of addiction? Hey, Heather, the opposite of addiction is connection, right? The reason that they want to make sure they get you into a program where you're around other addicts is because when you start to get connection, when you start to feel connected to other people, the serotonin starts to get released, right? There's enough science to back this up, people, that it's literally shocking. But you want serotonin released in your body, start hanging out with other people. Start doing fun activities, hanging out with other people. Start caring about people other than yourself. And what happens is both halves of the brain can start working. Dopamine has its place, right? I'm not telling you to avoid dopamine. I'm telling you this stuff so that you understand the difference between happiness and pleasure. A chocolate bar is always going to bring you pleasure. It always is. At least it's going to for me. I love chocolate. And as a heroin addict, if anybody, has struggled with opiates, that that's the same part of the brain, right, that grooves to chocolate. Like you want to test to see if somebody has ever had an opiate problem. Put about 5 or 6 different kinds of chocolate in the house and see how fast they pound that. And I really have got to keep myself in check. I saw a thing done years ago where they filmed the eyes, right, up close, and they filmed the eyes of an addict. This guy had 20 or 25 years as a heroin addict and had been, I don't remember, it was 6 months or 8 months or something sober, but they fed him dark chocolate and they filmed his eyes. And for the first probably 2 minutes that he was on there, the first thing that you saw when he ate the chocolate is his pupils went like this and dilated down to pinpricks. His brain, for a couple of minutes, couldn't distinguish between heroin and chocolate. And there's a great book, if you ever want to get it. It's called Chocolate to Heroin. And it is an amazing read about just exactly what we're talking about dopamine and about addiction and all of those things, and how the reward center of the brain, the same one that what it does for chocolate is the exact same thing that it does for heroin. Now, is that a good thing? It is in the first 7 days that you quit heroin. Believe it. There are places around the country where if you're going into a rehab, they're going to keep sugar into your body as much as they can. They'll give you anything with sugar in it, right? Because they know that sugar is going to release dopamines. And in the very beginning, anything they can do to keep those dopamines flowing until they can get you a little bit more stable is usually not considered too bad a thing. Now, back to serotonin. It makes the brain say, this feels good, right? The second thing that happens when your brain starts to go, this feels good, is it's going to make your brain say, that's enough. That's enough, right? I feel great. Time to go home. Not something that happens with dopamine. I mean, for those of us who know, what's the old cliche, right? They say one is too many and 5 million ain't enough. It doesn't matter how much dope you do, there's never enough. Why? Well, because it isn't about the drug at that point. Once you're addicted, it really is just as much about the dopamine as it is about the drug. This is why when Mark and I did the video on medical assisted treatment, and we started to talk about the substance naltrexone that they're using to treat people with alcohol abuse disorder. I guess saying alcoholism these days is considered not cool. I don't know what that's all about, but honestly, I even got an email from somebody that said, you shouldn't say, oh, I'm back. Okay. Sorry, people. I guess we paused for a second. Internet froze, and it wasn't on a very good picture of me either. I had to look on the screen and see me doing that kind of a look. And I have no idea what I was talking about, which happens a lot. Oh yeah. Well, I would know I was talking about serotonin. Yes, I was. Yeah. So, like I said, one is too much, and there is never enough. You continue to chase it. I was talking about naltrexone. So the reason that they're having so much success with naltrexone when they're treating alcoholics is because you tell this person, you know what, you can continue to drink. If you're willing to try the treatment on these terms, you don't have to stop drinking. Well, I mean, we all know what the addicted brain says, right? Hell yeah. Well, I'll give that one a try, right? I'm allowed to continue to drink. It doesn't make you sick. It doesn't do any of the things like an abuse or anything else. But what it does is it stops the body's release of dopamine when you get alcohol. So you can continue to get the buzz. And this is really the proof of the whole addiction model. Because, if people say, well, that's not me, man. I like the buzz. Okay. You get on naltrexone and watch how you like the buzz when your brain stops supplementing the alcohol with a bunch of dopamine, because their success rate has been through the roof. It's not fun anymore, right? The brain doesn't go, I'm having a good time, I'll keep dumping these chemicals. When there's no chemicals getting dumped, the addict stops the love affair with the alcohol. It just quite simply works. And it's sort of the proof of all of this. So as I said, serotonin makes the brain say, this feels good. And more importantly, it makes the brain say, you know what, I've had enough. That's good for the day, right? Now I feel good. I can go and do what I do. And as we said, it has a very long lasting effect, which is why it makes why the brain is comfortable to say, yeah, that's enough. I feel good. With dopamine, it's like that. And then you need the next one. And it's like that. And you need the next one. As I was saying before, that's why the crack epidemic was as bad as it was. That's why we saw people who, after 5 days of being awake and taking a hit of crack every 15 minutes, were willing to kill people to get the next one. It was as much the dopamine as it was anything else. Now, people, you need to pay attention to what I'm about to say, because this part is important, right? And that we've covered both halves of this equation, right? Now, what I want to talk about is the danger of certain drugs. And the largest danger out there when it comes to this phenomenon, right? The pleasure center of the brain phenomenon is methamphetamine, right? Amphetamine in general, but crystal methamphetamine, it doesn't get you high the same way that other drugs do. It keeps your brain constantly releasing dopamine, right? So instead of getting that quick, switch where you go, boom, there it is. You do heroin, you do, weed or anything else that you're doing, the brain's going to do that dopamine release and make you feel good. When you're on meth, it's going to it makes your body basically release all of the dopamines that it has. It really, truthfully floods your body with dopamine, and for a very long period of time. This is why people are willing to stay awake for 7 days, right? They don't want it to stop. They just keep taking more so that the dopamine keeps getting released. Herein lies the problem. We haven't got enough study time on people that, let's say, have 25 years, 30 years of meth abuse. Those people are out there. because this stuff really started to gain popularity at the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. But at that time, it was P2P, right? It was made with propanol, and it was a completely different animal than the methamphetamine that they're making today. And the stuff that they're making today, that, we've talked about this before. There's so many different ways to make it. There was a documentary done here in Nevada where a police officer said in 1 year they had busted over 3,000 unique recipes, right? These were labs that had basically 3,000 different recipes for how they were making this stuff. Now, granted, it's probably all the same chemicals, but when you start talking about how much they're putting in or what they're using instead of this or supplementing that, the point being, you never know what you're getting. But the danger of releasing all of those dopamines are that down the road, right, they have a syndrome that they call Anadonia, right? And what this basically means is that dopamine doesn't get created anymore. Your brain's done. You get to a point where your body says, you know what? Can't keep doing it. You know what I mean? I keep making it. You keep dumping it. I keep making it. You keep dumping it. I'm done. And your brain literally shuts down the production of dopamine. And when that happens, you get Anadonia, which is the inability to feel pleasure from anything. Think about that. The inability for anything that you do in life to bring you any kind of pleasure. Now, for those people who are messing around with meth and thinking, I haven't been doing this 30 years and I'm not gonna, I'll be off in 5 or whatever. You also have to start thinking about some of the other problems. So I'm going to throw out some math. The numbers mean nothing. I'm using them for the point of illustration. I'll say that again. These numbers don't mean anything. They're for the point of illustration. But you do things in life and your brain releases a certain amount of dopamine, right? The doctor hands you your baby. And let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, that's like 90, right? That is just an unbelievable release of dopamine. And, the first time you're intimate with the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and you're just so in love and you go in and you do what you do, and that's 85, or 95, lights flashing, just amazing. And then you do methamphetamine in a needle and you get about 140. And while you're on methamphetamine, you have sex, right? And now you're up around 180, 190. Well, what happens after 5, 6, 7 years of that lifestyle when you cut the methamphetamine out of your life? And now they hand you your baby and you get a release of dopamine of, say, 85 or 90, but you're used to running all day long at 250, right? And what you should be feeling, that unbelievable bond that is created, not just by, Mother Nature and by this chemical. Believe that. What creates the bonds are these things: serotonin, dopamine, all of these things being released into your body is what makes it beautiful, and they're gone. You're so used to running here that all of a sudden, you're the person that you're in love with and you're married to, sex is kind of boring these days, isn't it? I mean, you were used to your entire body coursing with every kind of feel-good chemical that it has the ability to produce, all being released into your body because of the meth. And now you're going to try to live life without it. That's a danger, people. That is an ugly, ugly danger. And I know people, honestly, who suffer from Anadonia, people that spent so much time in the chase of doing meth that these days there's literally nothing left that throws their switch. And where does that leave you? I remember having a long conversation with a guy in prison about it. And, the first time you hear it, you think maybe they're putting you on. You know what I mean? You can't feel pleasure, whatever. But then the person for 6 or 7 months, and you realize that in 7 months, you've never seen them laugh. You've never seen them smile. Terrifying. And I remember saying to the guy, I'm not trying to, be this person or whatever, but man, if there were me, I'd probably just get back on it. You know what I mean? I mean, if you can't experience any pleasure, and his response was, it doesn't work anymore. I can do all of it I want. It doesn't do what it used to do. Basically, I mean, his body's done producing it, whether or not he's using, dope to try to get it to release. There's nothing to release. He said he could smoke the stuff. He said it'd keep you awake. It certainly doesn't make you feel good. if you're in that life, if you're out there today and you're doing any kind of these drugs, man, read a little, right? Spend a little time. It's absolutely amazing. I know drug addicts that won't buy a pair of earbuds without spending 45 minutes to an hour reading about which ones are good, spending 2 hours to see if they can save $10 in the exchange, but you're going to dump chemicals into your body, right? Nonstop, day after day, without having a clue what they're doing to you. Spend 25 or 30 minutes reading about what this stuff is doing inside your brain. Because for me, people, when I got a handle on exactly what the chemistry of the brain was as it related to addiction, it changed my entire philosophy. It really did. One of the cliches that I say all the time, I'm sure you're sick of hearing it, but the only way to win a fist fight with your drug of choice is to not get into a fist fight with your drug of choice. That realization came to me through studying this stuff, realizing that, doesn't matter how much I pump up my chest, grit my teeth, I can't win, because it's not me fighting the drug. It's me fighting me, right? It's me battling my brain, and there's just no way to win that. The only way to win that is to never light that first match, right? Because once I touch that match to the fuse, there is nothing on this planet that will put that fuse out. Nothing. And I'll tell you something, people, there's power in that knowledge. That's not powerlessness. That's power. Knowing full well that, I'm bulletproof if I don't light that match. There is nothing on this planet that's going to screw me up if I don't do the first one. If I never take that first one, I got nothing to worry about. Now I can spend all of the rest of my time on this planet hanging out on the serotonin half of the brain, right? I'll get dopamine. I ate some chocolate today. It was lovely. But I didn't eat 40 of them, because now the logic center of my brain starts to say things like, you're 17 pounds lighter than when you first started your diet. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't like losing weight was 10 or 15 years ago. Now it's now it seems like if I walk by chocolate, I put weight on. So as much as it tastes great, I'm not going to pound down 15 of them. Those days are over. Chasing pleasure for the sake of pleasure, I don't know. I'd rather chase happiness for the sake of happiness. But that's me. People, before I turn this over to my bobbleheaded partner, I would like to thank my bobbleheaded partner. Tonight's PowerPoint presentation, I don't think this is going to come as a shock to anybody on the boat, but I didn't put that together. So I would like to thank Mark for the effort that he put in, because boy, it is certainly a lot easier and a lot more fun to have that up there. You know what I mean? It's for you people to have a chance to see it, and for me to have it as an outline to work with. So Mark, I appreciate that. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Thank you for that. I mean, honestly, yeah, I think this is probably one of the most important subjects we could talk about.
I agree with you.
I honestly do. I mean, I'm not just saying that either. That is something that I wholeheartedly believe, because, I mean, most people, when they take a drug or whatever, they're assuming that drug is making them feel good. And it's not. Okay? That's not what's making you feel good. The drug's causing your brain to release those chemicals. That's what's making you feel good. Your brain is still at the center of all that. So that's kind of what I would, say, because some people just don't put that connection together, And why would you? I mean, if you're not really into what we're doing, I mean, why would you actually, unless you're a doctor, a neurologist, those kinds of things. But the average person like myself and like Tommy just said, once he figured out that part of it, it changed everything, because now you're able to understand it at a level that makes sense. Because oftentimes when you're addicted to something, a substance, and you don't know how that works, I mean, it really confuses you. It really does, and you don't know why. And, so to have a handle on this, and I even texted Tommy earlier, and I said, you know what? This is probably going to help family members a lot more than what it's actually going to do for the addict, because it helps the family member understand that this is something biological. This is something in the brain that's actually taking place, and here's why. Here's the reasons. So, when I flashed the graphic up there of the dopamine and the serotonin together, if you guys compare those brackets, well, I guess I could put it back up real quick so you guys can see it. But when you compare those two side by side, let me get it back up. Sorry.
There you go.
There it is. Yeah. But when you compare those two side by side, it really opens your eyes, because you don't understand any of that until you know this. I mean, you really just don't. I would encourage anybody to, stop and take a screenshot of this or simply Google it, something, because that's actually a good thing to even remind yourself as an addict, because you'll forget that. You'll forget that, hey, this is something different going on than what I really thought it was. And this will help people understand that, when we say this is kind of a disease, this is one of the reasons why. When you go to like a psychiatrist and you go in there and they're treating you medically, they're trying to give you, and we've all heard, hey, serotonin, right? We know what that is, but nobody understands that, its little brother is dopamine. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I mean, like Tommy explained, and dopamine, and like I said, is short-lived. Serotonin that's why they give you serotonin. If dopamine was long-lasting, I would see a bunch of psychiatrists giving everybody that. You know what I mean? And you just can't. I don't even know I don't think it's possible to reproduce that. I don't even know.
Something? A long time ago, I did a rapid opiate detox, and I've talked about that on the show before, where basically they knock you out and they get you to kick heroin in 8 hours. They give you Narcan, but they keep you asleep while you're thrashing around, and you go through 7 days, 8 days of kicking in 8 hours, but they keep you unconscious. And when you wake up, they give you injections of. They give you 5 preloaded syringes of a synthetic dopamine that you're supposed to take. That is, and you're supposed to take one a day, and it's supposed to, in theory, make you feel normal now that you're, got clean on the stuff. I don't remember it doing a whole lot. I remember taking it not even the way I was supposed to. I think I took all of it in 2 days or 1 day, and it still was not really that kind of feeling. But what they do with a lot of those drugs, Mark, is they're just taking what you already have in the brain and they're rechanneling it, right? They're keeping it from going here, or they're making it go there. They're usually just working like they did it with the serotonin. But I agree, they're not doing dopamine reuptake inhibitors, right? They're doing serotonin reuptake inhibitors, because one is obviously going to do it, a considerably better job than the other.
Yeah, 100%. And that, and again, I think that's why this is such a great conversation and a great topic, because it's those kinds of things that people have questions about that, sometimes they're kind of embarrassed to ask, because they probably kind of feel like they should know it. You know what I mean? And this is, I really do think, I texted Tom earlier, I said, dude, you just picked a great subject. My mind wasn't even there. I mean, he picked the subject and it was like, wow, yeah, I forgot we touched on this, right? I mean, we talked about dopamine and what it's doing in the brain, all these other kind of things, just not to this level to where people could really grasp the whole show's about comparing serotonin to dopamine and what's different there in the brain. And I really think that it helps, especially like family members, understand that there is actually something physically going on. It's not the chemical itself causing the issue. It's actually the chemical affecting a part of your brain, causing your brain to do something. And like you said, you're creating those new neurological pathways, and what the psychologist is trying to do with depression and stuff, just moving it around. Hey, go down here and take a left instead of taking a right. And it's kind of like that. I know it's very simplistic or whatever, but that's what it is. And those of us that are, on the medicated assistance with Suboxone or whatever you're doing, you're even just going from a regular opiate to that. And I don't like using the word regular, but, Suboxone is different. I mean, let's just face it.
There's no question.
It's different. So your brain will still repair some of that stuff while you're on Suboxone, because you're now it's affecting the receptor different. And my point is that we're still taking different roads. And I want to say this too. This is kind of a good place to say this, I guess. Everybody's road to where they need to be is going to be different. And I think that's why you have to have a personal relationship with your doctor, with whoever you're trying to, really get to, whether it's an outpatient program, whether you're inpatient, whether you're just trying to do it yourself by taking naturalistic stuff, and whatever you're doing, if it's working, do it. That's kind of.
Mark, let me just say something real quick here, because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. Greg F. says serotonin inhibitors are in depression meds. I've taken them for years. Yes, but they are reuptake inhibitors. It's SSRI, so it's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It's not that they are inhibiting serotonin production. What they're doing is inhibiting the brain from being able to absorb it in. So normally your brain there's a release of serotonin, and then it gets sucked back into the brain and it gets processed out or whatever. With SSRIs, it's stopping that from getting vacuumed out of the room, so that all of the happy stuff hangs out around the brain longer, and in the process of doing so makes you happy. But it's not inhibiting the production of serotonin. If it did that, they would be miserable pills. They would not be antidepressive.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you stopped me there, because that definitely needed to be clarified. Because you guys ever heard the phrase, my brain's a sponge? It literally is.
It is, right? You know,
it literally is. So whatever you've got going on up there in your brain, it's sucking chemicals in all the time, whether it's a natural chemical or whether you put it into your body. And and so to understand the difference between an inhibitor and just the serotonin itself, it's not the same. It's totally different, really. But I could see how people, hey, they put serotonin inhibitors in that. They would automatically think, hey, my brain, it's stopping my brain from producing that.
Right.
So thank you for clarifying that, because I would have just skipped over that. I wouldn't even have caught that. But yeah, no, and it's, again, this is such a great topic because stuff like this comes up. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that people are engaged in it, because I'm telling you, if you guys are here, anybody listening to us right now that aren't necessarily talking in the chat, you're just trying to learn a little bit of something or whatever, and you're a family member, and I keep saying that right now, but I do think that that's important, because this will help those family members be a little bit more understanding of what the addict themselves are actually going through. Yeah, it'll let them know that they're not just throwing their hands up. They are trying to do something that is extremely hard to accomplish, and when we're showing you the reasons why. But let me say this: it also will let them know that this is not an impossible feat to achieve. Yep. We understand this now, and once you understand it, how can you get to the goal if you don't know what the goal is? And Tommy has said that so many times, and it's a great thing. You have to know what the goal is. If you don't have a purpose, what are you doing? And this is one of those things. It just fits all into that. And so, yeah, I mean, that would be, and again, Tommy dove into it too. And we've talked about this. The way we educated ourselves on this was pretty similar. When our minds, I guess, just kind of worked the same in that aspect. Because when I figured out that I had an issue, I dove into it. I mean, I wanted to know why I had an issue biologically. I wanted to know everything I could about it. I didn't care what it was, whether it was, whoever talking about it, whether it was guru over here or doctor over there. I didn't care. I wanted to know all sides of it so I could make the proper decision for me and my life and my family. And I would encourage all of you guys to do the same. And that's, me and Tommy's hope here is for that kind of stuff to start happening. And it is. I mean, we see it, right?
Yep.
We've had multiple family members come back, either an email or come back to the chat, say, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We don't necessarily, because a lot of people don't want us to say their names. They don't want to know. They don't want everybody to be out there. And that's cool. I get it. But just know that that's happening. That's happening. People are getting help even when it doesn't look like on the surface that maybe we missed the mark on that one or something. Typically, we'll get a few emails every video we do. And that's a great thing because that's what we want. We want to be able to help. And hopefully you guys like this. I mean, and I know that, I try not to flash the graphics fast. When I put them up there, I let them stay because I don't want to distract. And because I know that can be distracting. But I think that the illustrations here was for this topic is a good thing. Because
perfect. It really is. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like flashing neon lights or something either. Like, well, when I had the Christmas scene thing, I get why everybody thought that was distracting because, I mean, I did. I had a lot of stuff on the screen. And if Niall's listening, there's Niall in there. No, I ain't seen Niall. He called me on it. He's like, dude, that's distracting. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It is, I guess. I didn't even pay attention. I was just trying to make it fun. But
no, this is good stuff, though.
Yeah.
This is really good stuff. Jacob Forrester said, the deadpan personality thing is something I went through after trying to snort South America for 2 years. I was kind of meh for almost a year. Yeah, Anadonia, the inability to feel pleasure. It's real. I mean, this is definitely something that people go through. And I'm not surprised that Coke would do that. Coke is another one of those drugs, like we were talking about with the crack, right? You hear people talk about it, but if you've ever really abused that stuff, the buzz is about 15 minutes. I mean, really, the initial, buzz after doing a line doesn't last very long. So that's why you ever go to those parties where every 5 minutes, 3 people disappear to the bathroom. I mean, literally, you're to the point like, you got to be kidding. They can't get through 4 minutes of a conversation without getting up, walking into the bathroom, doing what they do, and then come back.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, do it on the table. For the love of, I mean,
yeah.
It used to drive me crazy. It really used to. But yeah, one of those things. Brian Michaels, good to see you. But yeah, Jacob, I'm not at all surprised that that happened. I'm really not. It's definitely one of those things. Jesse Brown says, been lurking the whole time, but having a rough day. Love and hugs to all who need one. Well, Jesse, love and hugs to you too, bro. Sounds like you could use them. You know what, people? Before we go, I've got a favor to ask of the lifeboat crew, and I don't do this very often. I really don't, but I'm going to do it today. And I'll start it by doing this. Thanks, Charlie Murphy. If you knew the number of times that a video ends and Charlie goes over and leaves 2 comments immediately after the video, we get a lot of comments in the live chat. In fact, on a good day, maybe 800 or 900, right? Sometimes more than 1,000, a ton of them. And that's good. But if we get a couple of comments when the video is over, it just helps the algorithm a little bit. If you just say, you know what, I enjoyed it, or Tommy, that was awful. Either way, good, bad, or whatever. Just if it strikes you, leave a comment. Anything we can do to push the algorithm. Right now, folks, we're on a great curve. We really are. The growth here at the Lifeboat is, Mark and I were talking about this a lot in the last couple of days. It's just real. It's real. It's consistent. The views just keep getting bigger. And what that does, again, it's not about, talking about how many views we've got. It's not about any of those things, but it's about pushing this out to as far as we possibly can. We would like to see this boat end up in every single harbor across the planet. So Charlie, thank you, man, because he's as consistent as the North Star when it comes to popping over there and leaving a comment. I really appreciate it. Yeah. And if not, I still love you guys. But if it strikes you, it would be a good thing.
And I would add please share it to Facebook, to TikTok, to wherever you're at on your social media, because what'll happen is if you guys share that out there, their social media platforms, it will actually hit their algorithm too. And when that happens, and then you're getting people in to listen, to watch, and all that. And like Tommy said, we don't concentrate on the views and everything for the reason of, making ourselves feel good and putting a feather in our hat. We use that as a data point to to validate that we're actually doing something, right? That we're actually growing. That's the only reason. I mean, there's no other reason that we do it, really. That's really the only way we got to tell, if people were in here in the chat talking and all that kind of stuff, and the view count, You know, you could have 5 million viewers, but what good is that 5 million subscribers if you're getting 10 views a video, right? So that's kind of why we look at that. So please share it out, guys. It really does help.
Wow. Did you see Jacob's last comment? Jacob said, "Yep, I used to have a bullet to constantly dose. I burned through 300,000 of 80s money in 2 years. Mine was kind of an extreme, short-lived active addiction." For those who don't know, and most of you do, a bullet is kind of shaped actually like a bullet. It's a little plastic thing, and usually there's about a 1 gram. His was probably a 3.5 gram metal, glass container that screws into the bottom of this. And there's a little lever on the side that allows you to put a metered dose in to this little bullet, and then you just stick it right up your nose and go. It's sort of it's like an ATM for cocaine, right? It's just a little way to dose out a metered amount. And yeah, the guys that were into it used to carry it, but $300,000 in 80s money, for perspective, people, he blew probably 800 to 850 grand in today's money, right? For real, maybe even more than that. You know, the economy is grown. I mean, the dollar is just now completely different than it used to be, but that's insane, Jacob. That really is. Thank God you got through that without blowing your heart up. And with that kind of abuse, it does not at all surprise me that when you were done, meh was the default setting for a year. I would imagine that you wore through the lion's share of all of the dopamine that your body had for the remainder of the 80s. Yeah, and you know what? It was pretty expensive stuff back in the 80s too. I remember it well. And then, the other thing before we end, I want to thank everybody who has consistently not brought up Vegemite in the chat here for honestly, it's been a pretty good run of not having to hear about that absolutely foul spread. It's probably because Fiona has been suffering with headaches, and the Alan Ballantyne has been out at work. So the only one I got to worry about is Charlie Murphy and Sir Kiss Freak, but the rest of them. And as promised, since I saw in the comments section that apparently, how was it put? Captain Clumsy Squirrel or Fat Finger Clumsy Squirrel. I'm not exactly sure how that went down, but here you go. Cat in a basket. That's what you were looking for? What do you say, Squirrel? Say hi to the crew. Yeah, Squirrel would like to, but she is just completely bushed from a hard day of playing. She disassembled the house today while I was trying to do things. Oh, Tommy's got to have it. Flamin' digs it too. Yeah, Flammy Jackson does like that stuff as well. But yeah, we could do without that yeast spread. I mean, is it that hard to pulverize peanuts, people? If you can't eat it out of the jar with a spoon, it's not a spread. DJ Daddy-O says, "Great topic tonight, Captain and Mark. I've been here the whole time listening. I love each and every one of you. Mr. T, that means the world to me. It really does.
Me
you're
also,
a good guy.
For sure.
Yeah. You're a good man. Hope all is well. All right, people. That brings us right up to the top of the hour. In fact, we are on the money. That was perfect timing. I want to thank everybody. This has been a great topic. And again, I want to thank Mark for putting this together, because this was really, I think the PowerPoint was on point, and it was just, when you see it and you hear it and it's interactive and you can read it, I mean, there's science to back that up. The more you do it, the more that kind of drives it in. So well done, Mark. Really appreciate you. And everyone for tuning in. I know I'm lucky. I know I am. So between now and tomorrow night, when we're going to get back together, there'll be a cat in the basket. My bobbleheaded partner will be on the other side, and we'll be doing the same thing, because it's what we do. Between now and then, reach out and try to save somebody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
Good night, people.